but it didn't take off. It should have been platinum, double platinum. It's a gold record, and that was a tragedy. So the band was kind of confused. Well, let's make a darker and meaner Kiss album. Paul got a bit disillusioned, didn't really care for that stuff that much.
Talking about an album that doesn't get mentioned very often, it was a departure for the band as well, Carnival of Souls. It was definitely darker than the typical Kiss
Yes.
recordings and things. So obviously at this point, grunge was big, alternative rock was massive as
Yep.
well. What do you remember of that period from the writing, the recording? What were your thoughts behind the sound and the direction that it took?
Well, Revenge should have done much better, but obviously the musical tastes were changing when
Yeah.
the grunge came in, and it kind of killed hair metal in a big way. And I know there's been articles and radio shows and everything about that discussion, and it's a valid discussion. But I see music that it goes in cycles. Okay, so it wasn't like that those bands didn't have good music. It's just this kind of change of the guard of every generation, and that's why Star Wars for a while just went away, and then all of a sudden it resurrected itself, right, and comes back even bigger. And I see that analogy even with Kiss going back to makeup, even though the band, especially all the music with Eric Carr and I was solid, and then with Eric Singer, we were firing on all four cylinders, but that desire for that, it was already that 10 years since, 12 years since.
Yeah.
So Gene was very attracted to the dark, kind of edgy stuff. He didn't like the flannel shirts and you look like you work at the gas station. He didn't like that. But he heard Radiohead's Creep. I'm a creep. That kills me. And then he would hear the angst and the strength of a Nirvana song that just knew how to connect with people. And the next thing you know, I'm tuning down a little. I'm listening to Alice in Chains and I'm going, wow, there's some cool riffs here. Let me see what I can come up with. Eric Singer, myself, and Gene would jam ideas in a little studio in Hollywood. I still have the recordings of much of it. And it was wild. We were just kicking around things. And some of the riffs, there's early versions of us. Why would Gene write a song called Hate if he wasn't, kind of influenced by this darker thing,
Yeah.
which without him being the demon, I guess there was an attraction to, well, believe me, I thought the Revenge look for Gene was really tough and cool. Okay. Unholy. Come on. You know what I mean? But it didn't take off. It should have been platinum, double platinum. It's a gold record, and that was a tragedy. So the band was kind of confused. Well, let's make a darker and meaner Kiss album. Paul got a bit disillusioned, didn't really care for that stuff that much. But when it was needed for him to come up with a riff, he writes Master and Slave, a lot of the riffs in that, and dialed it in. I co-write I did 9 songs I co-wrote, but that's just because I locked myself in my room, drum machine, guitars, ideas, vibes, and just recorded everything and brought them to both of them. Gene, we already worked on stuff, so then it was just, how can I warm Paul up to this kind of edgier, darker Kiss? And it worked. You know what I mean? He did respond to some. I know it's not, it's a record that he's not proud of, yet for some fans, they love it. So he's entitled to that opinion, of course. But I look back at Carnival of Souls and I just wish it was mixed a little differently, but I'm still proud of it. And then I have my one vocal performance, I Walk Alone, which was very prophetic at the time. But it's a record that got so screwed. I mean, we're starting it right after MTV Unplugged was filmed.
Yeah.
Mixing Unplugged to come out. They're already negotiating, unbeknownst to Eric Singer and myself, that they're getting these offers, and Ace and Peter are playing along, meaning they can get their signature and commitment, on their terms, obviously, because they're the ones that kept Kiss alive all these years. And I didn't even understand what, like sometimes there'd be these long phone calls that Gene and Paul would disappear with in the middle of, we're recording an album, you know what I mean? And it turned out that eventually they had to just share it with Eric and I, but I didn't know what was going on. And then, that Carnival of Souls was put on the shelf. because they were going out with the reunion tour, which I knew was going to be huge, and Eric and I knew it was like, oh boy. But I knew the record would come out. Paul told me, and business wise, it had to. The record company paid a lot of money for that. All right, and as much as maybe Ace and Peter didn't want to see that record coming out because they saw maybe more, and they had plans for Psycho Circus, which still completely turned into the Gene and Paul show. All the fans know that. I was even involved. I played bass on tracks and had a co-write. And I think Tommy Thayer played a lot of guitar in that already. So, but by the time Carnival of Souls came out, it was a little after the fact. But Jungle was a song that I wrote that was the radio track, and I was really proud of it. So it's an interesting, the final sessions is a very interesting, kind of footnote for the Kiss catalog, but it's something that it was kind of what was happening culturally was affected, and then what was happening to the band as a business group, splitting to go off into and not being able to support the record or do a video for the record. But I still know that I love it that we did so many different, if I could use the word, colors of records. Some are poppier, so they're brighter. Some are darker, so they're more black. Every great artist has, all these different styles. I'm crazy about Frank Sinatra and every, look, if you're a Beatle fan, do you listen to the early, oh, I love it, you know what I mean? Or do you listen to Let Me Take You Down, 'Cause I'm going, you listen to a drugged out kind of vibe. It's a different thing. And Frank Sinatra had all these different kind of albums too that were from dark to moody to love to despair. So what can I say? Kiss has a varied catalog of terrific music, and I'm just so glad I got my stamp on quite a bit of it.